Confucius' primary concern as an educator is learning to be human. The idea is that every human being is automatically born as a human, but unlike other species, this human, which is born as a human, must learn continuously to be human. And this continuous learning defines what a human being is and ought to be. This is one of the legacies particularly valuable for people in the new global ethics. The idea of learning is for self-learning, for self-cultivation. It is a ceaseless process. It is both a broadening and a deepening process. And it is something that no human being can escape. It is something that every human being, consciously or unconsciously, has been deeply involved. This legacy is so universal that it cuts across all linguistic, territorial, commercial, political, and other boundaries. It is a universal language that is embedded in every human being. We learn to be human as a process, a ceaseless process, continuously unfolding. It is something that we normally do not take for granted, but throughout the year and from time to time, we are aware that we are in this process. It is a process rather than a static structure. And this process continues and continues to unfold as we continue to grow. To become a human being, therefore, is always a process of learning. And this process of learning involves the involvement of ourselves in terms of our growth, spiritually, physically, mentally, in terms of our growth in interaction with the ever-expanding network of human relationships. A human being is a center of relationships. As a center, it communicates continuously with other centers. And in this ceaseless process of interaction, one becomes aware of oneself, aware of others because of one's aware of oneself, and also one becomes aware of one's self because one's involvement with that ever-extending network of relationships. In the family, in the village, in the country at large. Not only in the human world, but also with nature as a whole, with other species of life, with plants, with the mountains, river, and with the environment continuously evolving as an integral part of our self-knowledge and self-understanding. Confucius, from the beginning, argues that to become human is a dynamic, transformative process. It's not simply static. And this process of learning to be human involves an ever-expanding network of our being aware of not only where we are, what kind of a being we ought to be, in terms of our relationship with other beings. To be is, in this way, true becoming. This human being, human nature is endowed with, is an evolving, continuous, unfolding process of self-awareness, of self-understanding. Human beings grow continuously and expand continuously and interact with the environment continuously. And in so doing, human being is always in the being of becoming a human. This being human is a process that always unfolds and always gives meaning to the actual existence one has at any given time, at any given environment. This is not something specific to any linguistic group, to any ethnic group, any specially cultivated person. This is open to every person at all levels of society, in any environment, at any time. And this process of learning to be human becomes defining characteristic of human learning. And one of Confucius' great contribution is to allow his personal experience of growing up, from how to learn to be a human being among other human beings, and how to interact peacefully, interact fruitfully with an ever complex environment, and at the same time allowing the person to flourish, not simply as an isolated individual, but as a participant of an expanding human world. And in fact, very early on, Confucius is aware that to help oneself to establish, to be able to listen well, to be able to see, and to be able to hear not only the voices of human, but the voices of nature, and in fact everything. The ability of the human sensitivity, of the human heart and mind, of the human ability to listen, to eat, to survive, to find helpful, meaningful way of life. Every aspect of how to become a person is the duty of the person. Confucius' disciple says, if we regard humanity as our burden to be human, it is infinitely long and extremely heavy. The burden is heavy, the road is long, and because this is something that we cannot escape from. And our active participation in this process, in the world unfolding between us, is certainly the meaning of life, the meaning of existence, and the meaning of an integral part of an ever-larging universe around us. Therefore, to be a human being, learning to be a human being, is not simply a human task. It is also a human being's ability to understand the world around one and to also appreciate the universe as an integral part of our existence. in the human world today, facing various kinds of atrocities, facing all kinds of dangers of the international warfare at all levels, how to survive, how to simply live peacefully becomes the primary concern. And the Confucian lesson is that this has to begin with the self as a center of relationships. It has to begin with one's conscious understanding of one's role as a human being. And unlike all the other beings in the world, human beings never cease to learn to be human. And this ceaseless effort to try to learn is precisely the education that Confucius and his disciples provide for his generation. The idea of learning to be human is a continuous process of self-actualization, of self-realization. And the actualization is not simply a personal task. It is also a way of opening oneself up to others. And therefore, the self's relationships to others, including heaven, earth, and the myriad things, and the whole notion of living dynamically, interacting with an ever-expanding network of complex relationships, is the way to find meaning in human existence. And for the coming decades, as the world becomes more and more conflictual, as the assertion for one's self-position, for one's self-understanding become more and more urgent, this classical Confucian idea of learning to be human as a task of what a human being ought to be becomes even more important in the 21st century. Thank you.